Okay, I'm going to share the screen. Just a moment. Just a moment.
So yes, just share the screen. Everyone should be allowed to share the screen. And I just want to announce to everyone that we are recording right now. Estamos gravando.
Okay. And here, can you see it? Okay. Here's the National Museum Palace, Rio de Janeiro, Quinta da Boa Vista. It was before the fire. And let me show you this other picture. Here it is, the 2018, the destruction of National Museum. And a terrible event, but today there's a group, there is a mission involving both UNESCO and National Museum to rebuild this building, to reconstruct this building. And I'd like also not only to share this destruction, but also to share with you some other good news. Here it is, the cover of a caderno de campo, with USP, São Paulo University magazine, anthropology magazine. Here it says, here it is mentioning like seven women, anthropologist women that Brazilians and all should know. One of them is Marlene Cunha. Here's the picture of Marlene Cunha. And here it's our topic today. We are going to discuss her legacy and her epistemological thoughts. And I'd like you to welcome all, enjoy the panel, thinking with Marlene Cunha's with Marlene Cunha Archive, Black Collectives and Anti-Racist Agenda in Brazilian University from 1978 till 2020. Okay, and first I'd like to call his son, João Alípio, to present. You have 20 minutes to present, João, okay? It's your turn.
Tá me vendo? Tá tudo certo? Tá me ouvindo? Okay. Boa tarde, aqui eu sou o João Alípio, sou antropólogo, sou doutorando do Museu Nacional e vou fazer uma apresentação sobre o trabalho de Marlene Cunha e o grupo de trabalho André Rebouças, que foi o primeiro movimento negro na universidade pública. E eu trago uma apresentação que envolve arquivo, que envolve toda a luta antirracista na universidade e como também pautas que se mantêm muito atuais. Então, vou compartilhar.
João, let me just translate. Okay, like afterwards we are going to translate your speech, okay? Keep going, bye.
Tá. Tá aparecendo, então? Vamos lá. Arquivo e tempo, relações entre o Coletivo Negro Marlene Cunha e o grupo de trabalho André Rebouças. E, para alguns pontos iniciais, eu coloco, que todos os arquivos, fotos e material, documento que será apresentado nesse momento é referente ao acervo, à coleção Marlene Cunha e do movimento negro grupo André Rebouças, que surge em 1976 e veio a terminar em 1996. E antes de entrar, na verdade, propriamente no que foi o primeiro movimento negro da universidade, criado por Marlene Cunha, que foi uma das fundadoras e primeira presidenta, é importante falar todo o contexto e o período em que o movimento ele é consolidado, né? E é um período histórico de muita movimentação e de luta contra o racismo, num período de forte repressão e de constante ditadura militar, onde há as várias repressões na favela e também na universidade pública, no qual, nessa época, muitas lideranças negras elas participam enquanto estudantes dos movimentos negros do Rio de Janeiro e São Paulo, né? Aí eu trago aqui uma década de mobilizações. É importante destacar que nessa parte esses estudantes negros, esses coletivos de estudantes negros, eles a todo tempo eles estão antenados com as coisas que acontecem, com toda a mobilização, toda a articulação política e social que vem ocorrendo no mundo. Principalmente toda a discussão na década de 70 sobre o regime de apartheid na África do Sul, os movimentos Black Power nos Estados Unidos, e fora as lutas sociais, os movimentos sociais da década de 68 também, na França. Então, há uma grande circulação dessas ideias, ali em especial na década de 70, mesmo com toda a repressão militar realizada pela polícia, ainda há toda uma articulação entre esses coletivos negros. Vale a pena salientar em São Paulo, com o Centro de Cultura e Arte Negra, que é o SECAM, que foi uma criação de um sociólogo muito importante para nós aqui no Brasil, que é o Eduardo Oliveira, que foi um grande incentivador, também muito influenciado por outro sociólogo negro, que é o Abdias Nascimento, e ele começa a trabalhar no Centro Cultural de Arte Negra o Teatro Experimental no Negro, que é que teve como um dos criadores o próprio sociólogo intelectual negro Abdias Nascimento. E no Rio de Janeiro, que é onde o grupo de trabalho André Rebouças nasce, na cidade de Niterói, ocorre também todo um movimento de black music, do qual o estilo Black Power ele passa a fazer parte desses grupos jovens, eles passam a se identificar através da exaltação de uma estética negra, muito influenciado também pelo movimento Black Power dos Estados Unidos. E na universidade, na Faculdade do Cândido Mendes, no Rio, passa a haver uma concentração desses estudantes negros, desses militantes negros, que começam a pautar uma institucionalização desses coletivos negros, né? E é muito interessante que uma parte desse grupo, ele funda o IPCN, que é o Instituto de Pesquisa e Cultura Negra, que fica no centro do Rio, e uma outra parte desses grupos que se reuniam na Faculdade Cândido Mendes vão e formam o grupo de trabalho André Rebouças, que tem como sua principal estrutura, ideologia, pensamento, o matriarcado. Somente mulheres poderiam ser presidentes do André Rebouças. Então, foi um grupo muito marcado pelo matriarcado, até porque, nesse período, a exclusão e também a dificuldade de mulheres negras estarem levando esse debate nas discussões mesmo no próprio movimento era uma dificuldade e, em especial, a historiadora Beatriz Nascimento, ela teve uma concepção, uma ideia de formar um grupo na universidade que pudesse formar intelectuais negros, formar epistemologias negras, formar todo um arcabouço teórico a respeito das relações raciais, do debate que envolve raça, né? Esse slide, nesse desenho, ele foi um presente do filho do Abdias Nascimento, que é o Henrique Nascimento, e esse desenho representa uma máscara africana e ela, até todo o funcionamento do grupo, ela foi a logo do grupo André Rebouças. E o grupo ele foi composto, em grande parte, né, por estudantes negros da universidade, da graduação. E também contou com outros ativistas, músicos, jornalistas, com a colaboração de intelectuais negros também, pesquisadores negros, como a própria Beatriz Nascimento, a própria Lélia Gonzalez também, por um tempo, participou das atividades do grupo, o próprio antropólogo negro norte-americano, que é o Michael Turner, que fez pesquisas sobre o candomblé na Bahia, sobre cultura baiana, o slam, a presença slam aqui em Salvador também. O grupo foi um grande reduto de intelectuais que participavam das semanas de estudos sobre a formação social do negro, a contribuição do negro na formação social brasileira. E essas semanas, elas funcionavam como uma espécie de laboratórios. Eram uma espécie de laboratórios de pesquisa, onde intelectuais negros e brancos eles levavam suas pesquisas relacionadas ao negro, ao papel do negro na sociedade, de diferentes aspectos, e eles experimentavam os conceitos, as categorias e os seus pontos de vista sobre a contribuição e a produção. Isso começou, né, no ano de 1976 e foi um momento, foi um dos primeiros momentos, na verdade, que reuniu pesquisadores negros e brancos para discutir a questão racial num período que era proibido, primeiro, aglomerações dentro da universidade e, segundo, a criticar a ideologia da democracia racial que pautava, né, que o Brasil vivia numa certa harmonia social, no qual não havia uma certa desigualdade, vamos dizer. Era como se houvesse uma harmonia entre as três raças, o branco, o negro e o indígena. E esse período, né, as semanas de estudos, foi um movimento muito importante, do qual se produziu muitos livros e muitos artigos sobre a temática racial. Esse é um registro da semana de estudos, do qual A primeira foto está a Beatriz Nascimento, do lado do sociólogo argentino Carlos Rosenbauer, um dos grandes sociólogos, né, sobre o debate racial, muito lido nos estudos sociológicos. E embaixo são fotos das reuniões, das semanas. Tem a foto das plateias, das mesas. Funcionava muitas das vezes como através de conferências, seminários, mas também grupos de estudos. E para participar dessas semanas era obrigatório ter uma produção científica, a pessoa estar produzindo conhecimento sobre as relações raciais. E eu trouxe aqui o grupo, ele se comunicava através de cartas, e essas cartas elas eram também uma forma de convidar intelectuais negros e brancos para contribuírem com a sua produção. E eu trouxe aqui uma carta do Michael Turner para Marlene, do qual ele agradece e aceita o convite para participar da semana de estudos do grupo, do qual ele vai apresentar para os alunos, para os estudantes negros do grupo, os estudantes também, alguns da própria universidade, que projeto, que pesquisa, que epistemologia ele está trazendo como contribuição para os estudos sobre o negro, né? Eu trouxe também um documento que grande parte das semanas de estudo contaram com a contribuição da Fundação FOR, e em relação a trazer também pesquisadores estrangeiros para estarem discutindo, como também em relação à produção de materiais, de produtos, e também relacionado também contribuindo para uma certa produção de divulgação do grupo, que através de folders, de vários outros meios de imprensa que eu vou estar falando mais à frente, né? Essa foi uma reportagem que saiu no jornal sobre em debate a contribuição do negro, que fala sobre o quanto que o grupo André Rebouças ele produziu sobre a temática racial na universidade pública, né? Essa foi a forma de transmitir a informação de tudo que o grupo fazia dentro da universidade, como que ele convidava os alunos para estarem participando, como que eles possibilitavam a comunicação com pessoas externas à universidade. Então, o boletim era uma forma de imprensa que era fundamental para articular o movimento, o grupo de trabalho André Rebouças, não apenas dentro da universidade, como também fora da universidade, em contato com outros tipos de movimentos, como o Movimento Negro Unificado, que é o MNU, com o próprio IPCN, que eu citei anteriormente, como também alguns boletins iam para para a Universidade de São Paulo, através do contato com o antropólogo Florestan Fernandes, João Batista Borges, que também trocaram cartas, não apenas com Marlene, mas com outros membros do grupo, pedindo informações, coletando para saber como que era o processo. Então, esse boletim era além de ser um registro do grupo, das atividades do grupo, do quanto estava sendo produzido, era também uma forma de publicizar as ações e os trabalhos desse coletivo. E interessante que nesse boletim ele é acompanhado também de um breve histórico do grupo em relação à sua fundação, em relação quais as ações, as atividades, sobre uma informação sobre a última semana também. Há também um certo questionário, há uma grande preocupação do grupo estar produzindo estatística, estar produzindo sobre a presença negra na universidade, sobre questões referentes à situação do negro na universidade, sobre a produção do que o negro está produzindo também na universidade. Então, grande parte desses boletins, desses folhetos, eles vinham com perguntas, né? Um questionário, um curto questionário, do qual as pessoas poderiam ficar não apenas antenadas pelo que estava acontecendo, mas também elas contribuíam para que o grupo criasse uma espécie de documentação, uma espécie de arquivo sobre esse início, essa presença negra dentro da universidade.
João, só um instante. Se você puder condensar, try to synthesize the points, because we are going up the time.
Eu estou com quanto tempo?
Bom, pega mais uns 2 minutos, 3, tenta try to synthesize.
Tá. Beleza.
Tá?
E
a gente vai.
Tá, desculpa. O Getar, ele produziu também livros, 4 livros de intelectuais, né? Que muitos desses são artigos originais, inéditos, artigos que são produto das pesquisas e das discussões que aconteciam dentro do grupo. Eu trouxe aqui uma carta da biblioteca do Congresso dos Estados Unidos, do qual eles solicitam informações sobre o grupo, principalmente referente à bibliografia, às articulações, sobre a produção científica, folhetos, relatórios, boletins, revistas, livros, tudo que o grupo estava produzindo nesse período. Isso marca a década, 1989, né? Então, você vê, é possível perceber quanto que a produção científica que acontecia no grupo conseguiu almejar outros horizontes, né? E eu trouxe aqui uma agenda, uma pauta sobre o que o Getar estava discutindo. Eu trouxe uma relatoria da Marlene, isso é um arquivo inédito, não foi publicado, do qual, mais à frente, eu coloco os principais pontos. Vou tentar salientar de forma mais rápida. Esse documento ele é fruto de uma reunião do grupo com o reitor da Universidade Federal Fluminense, dentro da semana de estudos, do qual esse reitor abriu, né, deu uma possibilidade, né, era um reitor, embora estivéssemos na ditadura militar, era um reitor que tinha uma certa abertura para temas relacionados à questão racial, e as principais demandas do GETAR eram autores negros dentro do currículo das disciplinas de antropologia em geral, de colocar essa produção negra, que já na década de 70 já estava se constituindo e já existia, a elaboração de uma estatística sobre a presença desses estudantes negros na universidade e, finalmente, a inserção de professores negros na universidade. Essa é a Marlene Cunha. Marlene Cunha, ela é minha mãe também, e ela recebe essa homenagem do coletivo pela sua produção, pela sua pelo tudo que ela articulou politicamente, pela importância que ela tem dentro do movimento negro. Ela foi a primeira presidenta e fundadora do grupo. Ela foi pioneira na década de 80, na USP, e do qual escreveu, foi a primeira mulher antropóloga, né, negra a escrever sobre o candomblé, a primeira mulher negra a escrever uma tese do qual trata o candomblé numa perspectiva racial e de gênero também, levantando diversas questões que não se restringe apenas ao candomblé, mas também à questão racial, do racismo, e articulado com o tema da dança e da gestualidade. E já caminhando para o final, aí eu coloco algumas questões. Eu entendo que esses arquivos, esses documentos, essas fotos, eu entendo como artefatos de conhecimento, e elas causam efeitos, elas estão presentes até hoje na luta antirracista, e em especial nos temas relacionados aos coletivos negros na universidade. Então, nesses artefatos, a gente encontra uma memória política desses coletivos negros, principalmente nas suas diversas formas de associar-se. Encontramos também uma longa duração de certas pautas, desses temas que perduram ainda, são temas que são ainda muito debatidos e enfrentam muitos obstáculos até os dias atuais. E entendo que todo esse material nos aponta também para uma cartografia das relações raciais na década de 70. E, por fim, quero colocar que o coletivo, o Grupo André Rebouças, como o coletivo Marlene Cunha, há muitas semelhanças, há muitas questões e discussões que estão ainda em voga, e há também uma certa preocupação e uma certa pauta de estar produzindo epistemologias negras, formação de novos conceitos, de novas perspectivas e novos olhares para o campo das ciências sociais e humanas. E, enfim, agradecer pelo aceite e pela oportunidade de estar falando nesse importante evento. Obrigado.
Thank you, João. I think for those of you who don't speak Portuguese, I think you could get a glimpse of the debate with the slides. We will have time to discuss it. João is the son of Marlene Cunha. She's a central figure in the Grupo de Trabalho André Rebouças, which was the first group of Black intellectuals in the universities in the 70s. We will have time to discuss it later for those of you who have questions, but now I'd like to call Filipe Juliano to talk more about the Marlene Cunha Black Collective, and then we will discuss with Priscilla. Then Filipe Juliano, it's your turn. Okay.
Tudo bem? Estão conseguindo me ouvir?
Okay.
Okay. Well, first, thank you, Casey, for the aid, for the true help to build this moment. And thank you also for the American Fellows for their interest. It's very important for us to talk with you today. And thank you for the Brazilian Fellows also. Bárbara Cruz is a founding member of the Marlene Cunha Collective, and Professor João Comfort, who is a professor from Museu Nacional, a good fellow and a very supportive of the struggle by the Marlene Cunha Collective. And all my apologies for my English. It's a challenge to present, but I think it will fine. I will speak slowly, and any doubt you can ask me. Well, my name is Filipe Juliano. I'm a doctoral student on anthropology at the Museu Nacional from the Federal University in Rio de Janeiro, and I will present a communication called Challenges, Actions, and Thoughts for an Anti-Racist Science. In this presentation, I will resume a little bit of the history of the Black collective Marlene Cunha, and I will summarize some of the challenges for the establishment of an anti-racist science and academic environment, what to do to overcome them, and what are some of the results that we should have as a collective of scientists and Black researchers. So the Coletivo Negro Marlene Cunha was founded in 2017 at PPGAIS, the social anthropology program of graduate studies, when there was a considerable influx of Black graduate students into the program. And we used this date as a milestone because it was when about 10 students who are researchers now organized themselves to work together and to propose a more radically anti-racist policy and academic management, academic policy completely against races. And this is a milestone, but we know that is a result of a movement and a previous Black presence as well in Museu Nacional. So, and we say it specifically in the program with the Black people who came before us and the people who promoted the implementation of affirmative action, many students and professors, Black and white, that worked together in a long process of negotiation and formulation that took place in about 5 years to the final result. And we also take into account the Black importance for the formation of science in Brazil, and from the construction of the National Museum building. As Rafael said, the National Museum was a house for built by a slave trader in the 18th century, and also for the support work by Black people in the corridors of universities and other academic institutions. And we are called Marlene Cunha, as João said, in honor of a Black anthropologist who worked in the 70s and 80s, who was a pioneer in studies on corporality in Angola's candomblé, and who died in the birth of her son, who is part of our collective, João Cunha, and was also one of the founders of this first working group of Black university students to organize themselves in Brazil to propose the study of African people, Black people in Brazil, with an anti-racist look. So we are personally connected to this history and also politically, giving real continuity to the work of the GETAR, which was previously the struggle of Abdias do Nascimento for the literacy and education activities for Blacks in the early 20th century, from the Brazilian Black Front and also the abolitionists and so many others. And today we are about 40 members in the collective, with about 90% being women, and almost all of them coming from other places to do their masters and doctorate at the National Museum that is in Rio. That's a big city in Brazil. And we started in 2017 with around 10 members, and today we are almost 40 because we created a preparatory course right at the time of our foundation in 2017. And in these 4 years, we have already made 4 editions of this preparatory course, and we have prepared about 300 Black people to take the PPG's exams. And these exams are constituted by a written test that takes about 4 or 5 hours and should have 10 or 15 handwritten pages about a specific bibliography on anthropology, more an interview and research project evaluation. From all these 300 people, about 30 entered the Museu Nacional, and this number is twice the minimum required by affirmative action. And another large part of these people who took this course went to graduate programs in other universities. Now, not only the PPGs, the rest of the people, they can get all the exams and pass it, entered at the university. This is an important front of our work, the inclusion and strengthening of people who are researching and becoming scientists like us, in order to prepare these people to work in universities and research centers. No? And another part of our action is to promote events, debates, and the circulation of the scientific production of Black people with a specific Black anti-racist look, because the starting point of scientific work is the doubt, the asking, and the Black experience as a different point of view from what is standard in Brazil raises different questions also. So this applies in all scientific fields, no? And some eventually more and others less, but there's always a difference by a Black scientist. And another point of our action is to be aware of cases of racism, harassment, racist fraud in exams and competitions for teachers and researchers. This has happened a lot when these selections disregard the needing to separate a percentage of positions in certain competitions and selections, failing to foresee these job positions, or simply disqualifying Black candidates on a subjective basis. So it's a part of our work to be aware of the racist problems in selections and things like that. So observing our past action is the first challenge that we go through in this panel. So we look at our past, and here we can organize our future action, generating knowledge and disseminating it through articles or books that may appear from now into the future is a call for us. And the second challenge is to be able to analyze our situation as scientists, and especially as Black scientists in Brazil. We Black scientists start from a context, a framework of very big disadvantages, with serious structural difficulties, and yet we are reaching there. So we have capacity to come, stay, and work in science. Because the case of the National Museum and the Black Collective Marlene Cunha is a clear example. Today, 6 years after the start of affirmative action, we occupy 50% of the positions each year. A small opportunity from 20% is transformed into a 50-50 occupation. This is the Black power. But that is not the rule, as few places have been concerned with implementing affirmative actions in graduate studies, and fewer are those that try to mitigate these structural inequalities using socioeconomic, regional criteria, etc., to distribute scholarships and resources. Balancing meritocratic criteria, because even if they are meritocratic, in quotes, they are not always objective and clear. And the Black people knows in Brazil really good about that. So this is the general view for us, for the Black graduate student. The Black graduate student in Brazil, he's someone who does science in Brazil, but because it's important to remember, Brazilian science is done, 95% of the Brazilian science is done in postgraduate courses at public universities, but he is usually at the end of the row, the end of the line. The end of the row for those who win the scholarships, which in Brazil are about 1,500 reais for the masters and 2,000 reais for the doctorate. It's about $200 for the master and $400 to live, to eat, to buy books. And for the Black students, it's more difficult because this scholarship, that's the salary of the Brazilian scientist. In the case of the Black researchers, is still committed to family income, to help parents, to support the children, etc. So the financial situation for the Black researcher in Brazil is very today, under the Bolsonaro government, is going bad. If for the general point of view, we have an amplified challenge, which is the destruction of research due to the sharp drop in the funding of science in Brazil, along with the promotion of conspiracy theories by the government, the denial of science, and the advent of new fascism. And the third challenge, resulting from the second one, is to establish a solid position in a politically misguided debate. In this debate, anti-racism has been constantly compared and equated with white supremacist movements and wrongly treated as liberal or identity movement. In Brazilian Portuguese, we use it as identitarismo. I think maybe in English could be identitarism. It's like the movement was only for the identity or for the, when it's not real. Because when in reality, these Black movements have always tried to improve the structural conditions of Black populations and improve the democracy, whether in Brazil or in the USA. Despite discussions about how deep or revolutionary some Black mobilizations have been, it always seems that at least on some level, the struggle for affirmative action, civil rights, and the value of Black lives has improved the living conditions and community participation, both in politics and in the economy of the country where they take place. Something that's part of this challenge seems to be need to understand in depth. Something that's part of this challenge seems to be the need to understand in depth the racial functioning of capitalism and the structures of its hierarchies, as well as the role that liberal ideas played in slavery and in kidnapping of millions of Africans to the diaspora. This means deepening the knowledge of Western political structure and late capitalism, but also of its historical manifestations, in addition to understand the process of social change. Such knowledge can be very useful in defining an anti-racist and therefore anti-capitalist position, aiming at changing or at least reducing racial domination in society and consequently in the academy. The synthesis or results of our action, we think the people from Marlene Cunha Collective, after this brief overview of the relationship of our scientific work in the face of the world situation, and especially the Brazilian context, can be summarized in some points that I will read now. The first...
Filipe, só para falar que tem 5 minutos, 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. I will use 3. The first is to advance anti-racist policies in Brazil and in the world, such as reparations for slavery and racism, which in the case of Brazil has been placed on the affirmative actions policy agenda, taking an anti-capitalist position with a view to racial subordination that capital imposes on Black people in Africa and its diaspora, and the importance of Black lives, which is a common agenda of Black populations in Brazil and the United States, for example, in the face of the genocide and anti-negritude perpetrated mainly by the state action. This is a similarity by the Brazilian context, the US context. It's necessary, and perhaps now more than ever in the recent past, to advance scientific thinking and demystify obscurantist discourses. The bizarre situation of the growing number of people who believe that planet Earth is flat, or the conspiracy theories like QAnon promoted by new fascist movements, must be countered by Black scientists engaged in anti-racism. The constant denial of the existence of racism in Brazil 2 decades ago, when affirmative actions were in debate, was something like the believing in a flat earth, and Black scientists managed to demystify this idea. The current obscurantist reaction can also be defeated, as white supremacism in Brazilian society and the theories of racial democracy are being contested since then to now. So it's not a new challenge to defeat new fascism and conspiracy theories, because we got that for example, at the debate about the affirmative action in Brazil two decades ago. And one last point I would like to highlight here is to take advantage of these moments, like the one we are experiencing this Congress, to internationalize our scientific productions and create transnational connections with Black and white scientists around the world. The experience of entering universities and training of Black researchers in Brazil, like we have done here, in number not yet sufficient, but greater than ever before, places us on an agenda that has been lived in different levels in South Africa, Nigeria, England, and other countries in Western Europe. So we have to use that experience to exchange with these people. And the African-American experience in the academy also must be observed by us, in addition to the possibility of connections and actions for us and for them. And finally, after this call, I will say goodbye for you. And again, thank you, and congratulating the mediator. Thank you again, Mr. Casey. Thank you, Rafael. Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you, João. Thank you for all. and the people who worked for this event, the participants, and those who are watching. And also the Black Collective Marlene Cunha, who was very important to build this exhibition, sending data, information, and helping to shape this presentation. Thank you for all my apologies.
Okay, Filipe, thank you. For those of you who have questions, who have some doubts, we can use the chat debate here. You can post some questions here. Filipe was telling us about our situation today in Brazil. I could only say that during the last year, there was a hard campaign of Bolsonaro, Minister of Education, trying to finish the affirmative action in Brazil. It's important to mention it, and I'd like now to call Priscilla. She's going to talk more about the Marlene Cunha Black Collectives, and as I say, and I have told you, you can use the chat if you have some doubts, if you have some questions. Okay, then Priscilla, up to you.
And good afternoon to everyone. My name is Priscilla Mello. I'm a doctoral student in anthropology at the National Museum of Rio de Janeiro, just like my colleagues. I did my master's at the National Museum as well, and I have been part of the Black Collective Marlene Cunha for a little over 3 years. First of all, just like Filipe, I would like to apologize for my clumsy English. I'll try to speak slowly so that you can understand me. And if necessary, you can ask me if you do not understand something that I have said. As my colleagues commented, we study in a peculiar place. The National Museum was the home of the royal family during the Portuguese colonization of our country. For those who do not know, at a certain moment, due to political conflicts, the Portuguese royal family had to flee Europe and take shelter, curiously, in their colony. They started to live in the Quinta da Boa Vista Palace, provided by one of the largest, some say the largest, slave trader in Brazil. Decades later, the then Emperor of Brazil would transform his palace into the National Museum, a scientific research center, the same building that caught fire in September 2018 for reasons that are still somewhat mysterious today. That same year, after the fire, one of the only 2 Black teachers in the institution's anthropology program, Olivia Cunha, presented the results of a research she had been doing in the museum archives. In her research, Olivia found contracts for the purchase and sale of Black children acquired to serve as assistants to the scientists who worked there, whose names we do not know. That day, the last moment of the program's student seminar, there were some Black students in the room, a composition quite different from that of just a few years before, not only in this institution, but in many others across the country, which more than a century after the legal abolition of slavery, adopted affirmative action policies, changing the composition of these spaces a little bit. For a long time, and even today, Brazil was known as the country of racial democracy, the result of the meeting, as one likes to emphasize, not so violent when compared to other places, so they say, among the African, indigenous, and European people. The myth of the 3 races, a perspective that was reaffirmed and at the same time dismantled by a series of actors, thinkers, and activists through the 20th century. However, even though racism in the country has its singularities, we can by no means say that it's less violent. According to a survey conducted by the Federal Senate in 2016, 23 minutes, a young Black man is murdered in Brazil, the last country to legally abolish slavery in 1888. For more than a century, the state did not take any relevant measures that would contribute in any way to the regeneration of people who were removed from their homes, families, and vital ties. Strength bonds that, it must be emphasized, have not been completely eliminated, since the Black people managed, in creative ways, to resist attempts at elimination, both physically as well as their ways of life, songs, gods. Perhaps the public policy that received the most funding and governmental organization was precisely the incentive for decades for European immigrants to enter the country. A deliberated and intentional policy, according to historical documents, for the laundering of the population. After all, how a country could prosper and develop as it was taken over by a population of that type. No land reform for them, no specific policy, not for those people. More than a century after abolition, some public policies began to emerge, result of decades of struggles and demands of the Black movement, and after its implementation in several universities in 2012, the quota law was approved by the federal government, which provides that all federal institutions of higher education must reserve at least 50% of the vacancies of each technical course and graduation to public school students, which are divided between students from families with an income equal to or less than 1.5 minimum wage per capita. Within each income bracket, the law provides for the reservation of vacancies for self-declared Blacks, Browns, and Indigenous people and people with disabilities in proportion to the census of the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics of the states where the educational institution is located. And today, it is still in a progressive process of joining universities. In this sense, if since 2003, the State University of Rio de Janeiro was a pioneer in the application of the reservation of vacancies, on the other hand, the University of São Paulo only came to adopt quotas in 2017. It is also important to highlight the approval of a law which amended the law of guidelines and basis for national education, including 2 articles. The first makes it mandatory to teach Afro-Brazilian culture and history and African history content that must be inserted in the school curriculum. The other includes the National Black Conscience Day, celebrated on November the 20th in the school calendar. The approval of the quota law in 2012 did not occur without triggering a series of discussions, dividing opinions about the pertinence or not of the law, mainly based on the absence of biological races in the assumption that there is no racial segregation in the country. This understood, as I said, as an example of racial democracy, whose main indicators would be the miscegenation and syncretism between peoples and religions. However, this assumption contradicts the profound social and racial inequalities easily identified in any statistical data and in the experiences lived by Black people here. For example, in those referring to the genocide of the Black population and the entry and permanence of students in higher education. I do not intend to occupy you with too many numbers, but I would like to bring some that may be important to our dialogue. The last national survey by sample of households of the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics give the following number of the Brazilian population. 8.2 identified as Black, 46.7 as Brown, The sum of blacks and brown is considered by the Black movement as total of blacks in the country. That is 54.9% of the population. Indigenous 0.5, yellow 0.4, whites 44.2. In contrast to this data, in 2000, only 2.2% of undergraduate students were Black. In 2017, this number was 9.3, which means that there were 4 times more Black students than there had been 17 years earlier. However, despite this growth, Black students have not yet reached the rate of white graduates. In postgraduate, as you can imagine, this data is even more disproportionate. In the program in which we are students, the discussion about the adoption of racial quotas started in 2006, but only in 2012 was it approved. It is the first postgraduate program in anthropology that was created in Brazil in 1968, offering doctoral degrees since 1973. From this year until 2013, the program has given around 125 doctoral degrees, of which, however, only 4 of them to Black students, 2 non-Brazilians. In addition, no indigenous student had obtained a master's degree in the department until 2009, when Tonico Benítez, a Guarani man, presented his dissertation, until 2014, when the same student defended his doctoral thesis. Since then, the number of Black and indigenous students have grown considerably since the adoption of affirmative actions policy in 2012. It's in this context that in 2017, a group of students decided to create the Black Collective Marlene Cunha within the scope of the program, and has been carrying out a series of actions, not without difficulty and stumbling, in order to contribute with the instruments we have, not only to see the policy works, but also to think about what other steps are important and necessary for its improvement. In these 4 years, the collective organized 2 editions of the Black November Seminar in the years 2017 and 2018, in which roundtables were organized with the participation of teachers, researchers, activists from the Black movement, and members of traditional communities of African matrix. We also organized 2 inaugural classes of the academic year. In 2018, the conference, Affirmative Policies and the Situation of Blacks in Brazil Today, was given by Kabengele Munanga, retired professor at the University of São Paulo, and a great reference in racial debate, with an audience of more than 300 people. And in 2019, the inaugural class, Anthropology and Anti-Blackness, Reflections on Knowledge and Black Experience, was given by the researcher Luciane Rocha, professor at Kennesaw State University. On 2019, we organized the writing workshop for graduate students with Professor Carolina Rocha, doctoral student at the State University of Rio de Janeiro. In 2020, we completed the 4th edition of the preparatory course for Black men and women to the selection process of the program, that through its edition strengthened and supported dozens of graduate students, accompanying them for about 4 months a year. I would like to present you some photos of these actions that we have done in the last few years. So here's the e-fly of the first preparatory course in 2017. The first phase of the course. The second phase. The art of the first seminar, Black November seminar. Here is João do Pinheiral at the end of the first Black November seminar, a community which João Alípio made his research, a master research, his master's. Here the inaugural class with Kabengele Munanga. The second preparatory course, 2018. The first phase of the course. The second. The second Black November seminar. Inaugural class of 2019. The third preparatory course. The fourth. And the last year seminar, Black Anthropologists, that was with the collective Zora Houston of the University of Brasilia. Today, in addition to the actions we have already been taking, we are also participating in the Affirmative Action Policy Evaluation Committee that was established at the end of last year and intends to present a report with data and stories of this process by mid-year, pointing out the challenges covered and proposals for improving the policy. As I said earlier, the affirmative action policy in Brazil was a result of a series of struggles. In the period, and my colleagues also said, in the period preceding its approval, there was a reaction against it that involved academics and renewed public figures in Brazil. All the arguments used, often contradicting each other, but grouped and neutered together, despite their logical incongruities, were based on the maximum of equality. After all, if we're all human, and the concept of race does not exist after all, it's a delusion that has already been overcome by contemporary society, expressed only by archaic people, racist and others. Why should we implement a policy like this? A policy that would bring up dangerous divisions, an expression that was used as the title of a book published by these opposing intellectuals. We are all the same, we are all human, they say. Perhaps the logic behind this speech has to do with the challenge that's still present for us in this whole process. to move beyond entering the university itself? How can we think about what techniques and practice we have to make the encounter between these differences proliferate? An encounter that does not seek to eliminate the other, which with to meet. An encounter in which things can become stronger, more powerful, more joyful, despite what racist structures, even if disguised as democratic, proclaim. In a speech, one of our professors asked us, will it be possible to transport Western scientific medicine to other places without bringing together its immanent devices of power? That is, would it be possible to graft knowledges in such a way that instead of ignoring, destroying, or simply tolerating each other, they become stronger? It's to ask that women, indigenous people, Black people, migrants can do with and for the university, in addition to an empty slogan, "Live diversity." If you consider that the power structures of racism cannot simply be undone, but are like viruses that disturbs us at all times, how can we protect ourselves from them? Not to say we are all equal or we want to be equal. In this, perhaps, there is something powerful to be seen. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. And I think we have like 1 hour left for the debate. Just a few comments about the panel. Although the lack of Black students, it's an important data, I think we have to go beyond this argument. And that's the point that we are trying to debate today. We are bringing some experience of Black collectives during the dictatorship and today in the democracy. This experience we are sharing with you, and I think it started with João Alípio, with the archives of her mother, Marlene Cunha. He's the owner of the archives of Marlene Cunha. With the help through the archives, he proposed to make some connections with today's Marlene Cunha's collective. He showed us like the events, the seminars, and the debates in the 70s. And I think the debates that were happening there in the dictatorship regime in Brazil, they're still very important today during Bolsonaro government. He showed us some archives that are really important because it's the history of the formation of Black collectives in the university, in the Brazilian university. It started in Rio with Digitar, Grupo de Trabalho André Rebouça. It was during that time, it was led by Black women. The president were only Black women, he showed us. And there are some important letters of her that with the connection with the United States, he was telling about the 60s and the 70s, how the Black collectives were influenced what's going on in the United States, in France, and other places. And I think we can, with this debate, try to stimulate an open debate with other places and try to share some experience. That's the aim of today. And then there was like Priscilla and Filipe Juliano. They brought us with some data and some events and some seminars that were held by Black collective Marlene Cunha in honor of this Black anthropologist of the 70s. And well, we have a lot of things to debate, to highlight. And I'd like to open for all of you who have questions, for all of you who have doubts. We can like have, I think we have 30 minutes or more of debate, okay? Well, it's open. Well, if you, okay.
Thanks so much, everyone. Really enjoyed the wonderful presentations. It's really amazing to get to know the group of researchers that's working in Rio. I just want to point out that there's a little difference in time here, and we actually only have about 10 more minutes maximum.
10 minutes.
to go.
Okay.
It's supposed to end at 2:15 here. So if
Okay.
there's any quick questions, or if there are any closing thoughts that any of you would like to offer,
Okay.
I can actually leave the Zoom open and let you guys continue to talk, but
Okay.
that we're gonna have to move on at about 2:15 or a few minutes after that. So thanks
Okay.
again for sharing with us all the way from Brazil.
Okay. Now thank you. João, Priscilla. Oh, okay. If you have questions, let's see if someone have questions. Well, I think if you have some, João, Priscilla, Filipe, if you want to talk a little bit more, we are going to the end of the debate. Okay. If you have something to try to, if you want to share something, João, do you want? Quer falar um pouquinho mais? Está no final do debate. 10 minutos faltando. Fechar. João? Are you listening to us? João?
Eu não entendi muito bem. Ele quer a relação entre o...
Não, tá fechando. Falta 10 minutos. Então,
tá
se tiver algo para complementar,
Tá.
a gente vai passar pelos três.
Eu acho que essa oportunidade é muito assim relevante, até quando me veio essa coisa da participação do coletivo Marlene Cunha no evento. Eu lembrei do trabalho do sociólogo negro Eduardo Oliveira, do qual ele passou alguns anos, se não me engano, nos Estados Unidos, trocando e aprendendo com as universidades norte-americanas. E quando ele veio para o Brasil, quando retornou para fazer a tese dele na USP, ele teve o contato com o grupo André Rebouças e foi fundamental para que isso, antes do que das conhecidas redes sociais, já havia toda essa troca de informações de produção e epistemologias negras no Brasil, como também nos Estados Unidos. Não é por acaso que eu trouxe o antropólogo Michael Turner, que veio muitas das suas pesquisas financiada pela Fundação FOR para estar articulando com movimentos e coletivos negros na década de 70. Então, enfim, espero que cada vez mais a gente possa estar trocando e produzindo coisas. Eu acho que é isso.
Thank you, João. I can translate afterwards. And Priscilla, João, Filipe, and then Priscilla.
I think it's a very important opportunity to make connections and to participate in the international debate with the people who are studying the African people and diaspora. And for us as Brazilians, I think it's very important also because our political context and the need to make our voice to go through the world and the science, and not to be only here with this difficult context of no space for debate and democracy that we are experiencing now. So I think it's a moment to thank you and to be open to exchange informations. And I put here the email from the collective, so you can send any question, send any information that we are paying attention for you. And thank you, Casey, thank you people who was watching. So thank you people from my colleagues from the collective. So I think it was very nice, very great.
Thank you, Filipe. Priscilla.
I just want to thank for the opportunity. It was great also. Just that.
Okay. Then we have, I think we have other opportunities to exchange some more information about Brazil and exchange information about the US, what we are doing. Then that's what you were telling us, Casey, Watkins. I think I hope we have other opportunities to keep this debate. And let me only divulge. We have the Facebook of our collective, no? Can you share it, the link? It's in Portuguese, but it's our first meeting, English meeting. And if you have some doubts, you have our mail, João, Priscilla. My name is Rafael. I'd like to thank you all for listening and for sharing this explained debate, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. It was wonderful to get to know you, and hopefully this is just the beginning. I'm so glad that you reached out and joined our conference, and we would like to continue to have you and hope that this relationship grows. Eu quero convidar todos vocês a juntar conosco aqui nossa universidade e faz planos, faz ações, faz interações, né, entre as duas universidades. A gente tem aqui centro de Global Engagement,
Okay.
que é nosso órgão de fazer interação internacional. E eu vou botar todos vocês em contato através de mim. Falo um pouco de português, né? Eu passei um tempo na Bahia, minha casa segunda, minha casa espiritual, no coração verde e amarelo. But we are so grateful. Agradecemos muito the sharing of your experiences with us at JMU and the Center for AAAD Studies. Aqui nosso centro, nossa universidade faz parte dos estudos das experiências negras, né, internacionais na diáspora. Eu quero muito expand os nossos relacionamentos entre as universidades. Então, por favor, fique em contato comigo nessa luta importante.
Thank you. Queremos sim, vamos manter contato, Casey. Foi um prazer. Obrigado de nome de todo o coletivo.
Thanks everyone for joining us in the chat and in the discussion. I wish we had more time. Please join us for more of our panels. They start up again at 2:30. Comecemos já aqui 2:30 horas, né? Lá acho que é 14:30, né? Não. 16:30 para vocês.
Ok, depois pode mandar um vídeo para a gente compartilhar também, que a gente.
Com certeza. Eu vou te mandar um link e pode fazer um download.
Ok.
Depois.
Obrigado.
Tá bom? Grande abraço a todo mundo.
Valeu.
Muito obrigado.
Foi ótimo.
Vamos continuar a luta. Parabéns no trabalho muito importantíssimo, né? Muito importantíssimo. Vamos lá.
Obrigado.
Valeu, Cris. Obrigadão.
Valeu. Tchau, tchau.
Tchau, tchau.